Okay. So we're going to call this meeting to order, and before we begin this meeting, we wish to pay respect to the First Nations, both past and present, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people continue to play within our community. So we have several items on your addendum, which I hope you've all received. And I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for an approval of the agenda with the addendum items. 9.5, in addition to correspondence 13, and some background information for the closed session. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, we're up. All in favor? We go ahead. Do you have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor Fellner. I think you're muted, Terry.
Yes, I wish to declare I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the matter of item. Lost my sheet. Lost my place. Sorry. Item 5B, accounts B as the Wayne Hall Construction is my employer.
Okay, thank you. And we have 3 sets of minutes that we need to go through. So I'll read the motion for each separately and then ask for a mover and a seconder. So the first motion is the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the special and closed session meetings of Council held September 8th, 2020 as circulated. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
And a seconded from Councillor Coles?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. I have another motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of Council held September 8th, 2020 as circulated. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne?
So move.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Fellner?
Seconded.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. And the next one is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the special and closed session meetings of Council held September 11th, 2020 as circulated. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins?
I so move.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Finson.
I second that.
Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the accounts in the amount of $419,788.93. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Cole.
Second that.
And all in favor of accounts A? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve the accounts in the amount of $3,326.92. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne?
So move.
And a seconded from Councillor Collins?
I'll second that.
And all in favor? Thank you. And Terry can come back. And have you let Mr.
He was here. Maybe he's going to come back in a moment.
We have a delegation from Mr. Stivrins, who was on the call. Is it there now? No. Okay, why don't we move to staff reports and hope that Mr. Stivrins will redial in? He was in the call and seems to have gone, but we've got Katerina. Oops, is that him?
No, that
This is Katrina Curtis from the Georgian Bay Biosphere to talk about 7A, the report on the Bensnick monitoring. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive staff reports as presented on the agenda for the September 21st, 2020 meeting of Council. I don't need to read them all, do I? No. Could I have a motion from Councillor Finson?
I so move.
Thank you. And seconded from Councillor Osborne.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor of receiving the staff report? Thank you. Welcome, Katrina.
I think Dominique is gonna.
Dominique, are you going to lead in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this, this is the first year of our benthic testing that we've done. It looks a little different than what we thought it would look like this year. Due to COVID, we didn't have our students participate and we couldn't do any public awareness or public events with it, but we still went forward and although we can't really interpret the results yet because we need a few years of data for that, it does give us a good baseline. So Katrina is here to answer any questions, and hopefully most of council would have seen the video that was sent to them. That was quite interesting to see how they did the process. But Katrina is here to speak to it if you've got questions.
Okay. Mr. Stivrins, you can see that you're there. We've just jumped to item 7A, and we'll come back to you in just a moment, if that's okay. You bet you're welcome to observe. Does anybody have any questions for Katrina or Dominique? It's pretty interesting. I thought that I was surprised at how many bugs we have in Lake Joe and Lake Rosso. I thought they'd be the most polluted, but in fact, they had more invertebrates. Councillor Moffat, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I guess, given that Otter Lake is in its year 2 of testing, Katrina, I know that you had the data comparable, but does anything surprise you when looking at both of those years? There was a couple of items that sort of jumped out that were big variance, and I don't know if that's a trend or if you had any thoughts on. I'm looking at in our council package. It's page 65.
So yeah, that's a good question. There's nothing that immediately jumps out at me as being a concern. As Dominique mentioned, we do try to wait until we have 3 years of data before we start reading too much into the results. But as you mentioned, we do have 2 years for both Otter and Little Otter. I'd be hesitant to go any further in trying to interpret results until we do have at least those 3 years. We try to sample each year the same time of year, but every year is a bit different. Obviously, warmer water temperatures or cooler water temperatures, that sort of thing. So looking at only 2 years of data is a bit tricky to do any sort of interpretation.
Yeah, I guess the one I was looking at Little Otter, and I saw roundworms when you looked at it went 11, 11, 13, then 8, 9, 25. And again, I'm not a scientist, but there was a couple of like that, and it's just interesting to see what would happen in year 3.
Yep. Yeah, and that's exactly right. It'll be interesting to see what happens in year 3. That could just be a bit of an anomaly, or that might be the start of a trend. It's really hard to say at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, the same as midges in Big Otter as well. It's the same kind of variation. So thank you very much, Katrina.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. Katrina, these 3 columns in each of the charts, 1, 2, and 3, what's the significance of those?
So we do 3 replicates on each lake. So the terms, I guess, would be we have like essentially a sampling site on each lake, and for each of those sites we do 3 replicates, and that's to help us more accurately describe the benthic community in that area. If we only took 1 replicate, we could end up with a very we might not accurately characterize the benthic community in that area. By taking 3, we get a better idea of what we're actually looking at there. So yeah, each of those 1, 2, 3, that's our 3 replicates that we do, and we'll do those 3 same replicates each year at each site on each lake.
So does it detail the number of sites per lake or just the replicates?
You can think of it that way, but the terminology used in the protocol would be that those are 3 lake segments, and they're typically actually quite close to each other. So you might be a matter of several meters apart from each other. So it's really considered 1 sampling site per lake, but there are 3 replicates.
AKA samples? I've never heard the term replicate in all my life. Anyways, okay, thank you.
Yes, so yeah, we would have invertebrates collected in 3 separate buckets from those 3
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
areas. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Katrina and Dominique. I know COVID sent a little bit of interest to the sampling, and it cut back on the public involvement, but we're still very keen to keep proceeding and hopefully have more normalcy next year. So thank you very much, Katrina, for all the work and all the digging in the mud.
Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Severin, item 6, which is page 43 of the agenda package. And we've got a pretty complete report. So, Mr. Severin, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And joining me as well is Michael Reeves, one of the shareholders here. So,
Okay.
Your Worship and honorable council members, we thank you and appreciate the opportunity to have some discussion with you about our lands and access issues. To date, we've been disappointed by a lack of progress on moving our lands into the town of Parry Sound to allow for development of with serviced lands as in the bylaw. We have been attempting to move this property ahead since 2003, believe it or not, and presented our request to move the lands into the town of Parry Sound with no success to date, obviously. In 2012, we obtained our rezoning from Seguin to a C3 holding after submission and acceptance of preliminary studies we did on transportation, environmental, servicing, engineering, and zoning for this property. Currently, we understand the negotiations between Seguin and Parry Sound seem to be at a standstill. Both municipalities have acknowledged that an additional access road to the hospital, Rose Point area with Soxing First Nation and Archipelago Township is highly desirable and would definitely alleviate the traffic flows on Bow Street, especially in the busy summer season. So Parry Sound Road is a municipally owned boundary road since the 1800s when it was opened as a colonization road to access Parry Sound. It has been publicly maintained since then, but the portion from Oster Park Drive to the cable TV building has not received any maintenance in the last 20 years or so from either municipality to our knowledge. In the last few years, the Rona Lumberyard has blocked a portion of the roadway with a retaining wall and some building material storage. Currently, we believe that municipalities cover liability on the roadways under their insurance coverage as a boundary road. Under section 34, subsection 7 of the Municipal Act, our right of access to our parcels is protected by legislation. We are respectfully requesting Seguin to consider resuming maintenance and required upgrades on this portion they are not currently maintaining as well as taking some action to remove the roadway obstructions to give us linear access to our properties there. If the municipality is not willing to undertake this, we would appreciate at least permission to improve access by our own forces to enable us to access our property on both the north and south sides of Parry Sound Road. So the purpose of our presentation is we're kind of looking for direction, assistance, and support from Seguin to enable us to move forward. So, and as I said, both Michael and I are here. So if you have any questions or thoughts on it, we're glad to give our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did go back in my files just to provide you with a little bit of background. After this council got elected, we passed a resolution in January 2019 to appoint a committee to do the boundary adjustment negotiations with the town of Parry Sound. We met 3 times, once August 14th, 2019, once on October 22nd, 2019, and once November 26th, 2019, with the committee that was appointed by the town of Parry Sound. And at the last 2 meetings, we asked the town of Parry Sound to come back and describe for us their vision, what they wanted to do with the property. And we have had nothing back. So I guess I have to speak a little bit for this council that to a certain extent we're disappointed that the discussions have not progressed, because we said we would not stand in the way of the transfer of boundary adjustment, but quite frankly are waiting for the other half to come back. So that's just a little bit of background, and I understand that you want access to your property, and I think the best, we have a couple councillors here with their hands up. I will acknowledge them in a minute, but what I would like to suggest is that this request go back to staff to take a look at what's involved in opening part of the road allowance, and come back to council and yourselves with a recommendation of what could happen. But I'll turn it over right now to Councillor Moffat, who has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stivers, I'm looking at the colored map that you put together here. It says potential for improvement to allow access to lot 147, Section A fully, and there's a couple of rows. I'm going to say top and bottom, or left and right. What is the distance in the one that says end of street and the lot, approximately? Do you have that picture? It's on page 48
yeah.
of the.
Yeah.
Page 2 of your example, Mr. Sivers.
Yeah, it would maybe be 400 feet, Michael?
400 to 500.
400 to 500 feet from where the municipality quits maintaining the road. And if I can make a comment, there's not a requirement to open this road because it is a open road. It's just been basically abandoned for maintenance purposes, but it always was a founding road of the municipality, and it just the maintenance stopped on it. And our understanding is that a boundary road is jointly owned, and that usually there's an agreement of which municipality maintains it on behalf of both and that kind of stuff. But that is I think an important point, that it is a open municipal road at this point in time.
And Mr. Sivers, so if I'm looking at the access from Oster Park Drive, am I right to say that's where the snowmobile trail goes in beside the old, I think you referred to it as a cable building, but is that the old Humane Society? Is that?
No, the cable building is at the other end of the road, where it comes in from Oster Park Drive. That used to be the old Humane Society building.
Okay.
And so it from that end to come in is probably maybe 800 feet, I would say, Mike.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to go the length of the Canadian Tire lot to get to our property.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, George and Mike.
Thank you.
Question on the lots 147. It looks like it's blurred out a bit. And 148. At the center point at the top end of lot 148, Is that where the cable TV building is and the road ends, the maintained road?
Yes, yeah, that would be correct, yeah.
Okay. So the gap we're looking at here, coming the other way from Osler Park Road, past behind Canadian Tire, does the maintained road stop at the entrance to lot 147?
It doesn't quite get there.
Not quite,
That's
okay.
when you're coming from, if you're coming from the town of Paris Sound out past the hospital,
Yes.
it ends at the cable TV building, and from there, it's probably 400 to 500 feet to one side of our property, or if we come in from Osler Park Drive, it's probably 800 feet.
800, okay.
But
So the roadway in question there then is from the cable TV building, the middle top of lot 148 out to Hunt Drive or whatever it is by the old SPCA. That's the section of roadway you're referring to then, that has yet to be opened or maintained? Well, it is open, you said, but not maintained.
Yeah, it requires maintenance. It's just been abandoned essentially on a maintenance standpoint.
Okay, well, I wasn't privy to the committee that met with the town of Paris Sound, the subcommittee, throughout the end of 2019. But the way I understood it from our point of view, our subcommittee, is that we weren't prepared to spend any money in order to achieve access for yourselves or for the town of Paris Sound to take properties into their purview. It was a matter of cooperating with the town, and I don't think we committed to, well, we were against spending any money to do that. So when you mentioned that if you couldn't get assistance from Seguin, that you would be prepared to spend the money in order to meet your objectives, that's, from my point of view, the best way to go. All you need from us is approval, and then you can go ahead, correct, Mayor?
Yeah, I believe so, and that, you're correct, absolutely correct, Councillor Osborne. We went into it saying it wasn't gonna cost us anything, but I think it would be valuable to have staff take a look at what's involved. I know there's some hydro lines in there, that kind of thing, just to come back and say, yes, it's possible. I'm not saying delay it at all.
So, Mayor, so therefore, we hadn't even got to that stage? Nobody's actually gone and walked the property, and after all these years? I can't believe that, but
I
if
believe
we haven't,
I believe that Director Coppich has looked at the property, and he has, we can ask him to tell us what it's about, but it just happened in the last week after we knew this delegation was coming.
No, I realize that, but maybe Director Kopish could educate us as to what's there and what needs to be done. Thank you.
Go ahead, Peter.
From my understanding, it was, the access was from the SPCA building to the corner of his property. And I walked it, I took some pictures, I've got an understanding of what the geography and the topography is like. I haven't come in from the other end to take a look at that, but I did recently look at the Osler Park access side. And I believe it's a road can be put in there, but it needs a bit of work and there's some engineering to do.
Okay, Councillor Collins, do you have a question? Thank you, Peter.
Yes, yes, Mayor, thank you. I think I understand what Mr. Stivrins is asking. He's just simply asking to have to allow them to have access to their own property. I think you know, as you began this conversation about the boundary adjustment, I don't think that this has nothing to do with the boundary adjustment at this point. All they are asking is to have access to the property they own. And I don't have a problem with that as long as it's a boundary road, and if they own the property and they want access, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fellner. I think you're muted, Terry.
Yeah, I'm muted now. I'm unmuted. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Ted here that we've got a road that's open, but not maintained, so it's fallen into disrepair and basically untravelable. And you know, this group should not be barred from being able to make some improvements to get some sort of reasonable access into their property. I think the second part of the thing we need to look at seriously is that since the talks with the town fell by the wayside, I guess, for a polite way of putting it, that, you know, we should have a look at that. Certainly the section of road that runs in off Ulster Park Drive, we should have some sort of strategy, long-term strategies, thinking about it through our roads department. For, you know, for down the road. I mean, you know, that land may never go to Perry Sound at this rate, so, you know, we might have to, I know the discussion in the meetings were no, you know, if we give you this property, we don't want to pay for any road improvements, because then the road's entirely on the town land. It's not on Seguin land. If it stays on Seguin land, and services Seguin property, then we need to have a strategy to deal with that down the road. But for right now, I think it should be allowed to have the approval to do what improvements they see fit, you know, until a proper course of action can be determined.
And Councillor Cole.
I just want a clarification. Is the road in fact all on Seguin property, or is part of the road the responsibility of the town of Perry Sound? It's a little difficult to tell where it turns. Looks like it could be part, but it is a Seguin road. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes, from what I see and from where I walked from the Ulster Park side, it's entirely on Seguin Town Road. But once you get to the joint boundary between Perry Sound and Seguin, half of it is Perry Sound and half of it is Seguin. So therefore, the road allowance there narrows down to 10 meters. The rest of it, the orange section coming from Osler Park, is a 20-meter section of allowance.
And that's all Seguin?
It appears to be all Seguin, yes. There's no migration into Perry Sound.
Okay. Thank you.
Collins?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If it's on Seguin property or on Perry Sound property, what's the issues? I mean, I drive on Perry Sound property all the time when I go in to get my groceries. I mean, this is a ridiculous conversation that we're having about the boundary road, that if it's on Seguin property or on Perry Sound property, doesn't make a difference.
Well, Chad, if I could interject, my question was simply about whose responsibility it is. That's it.
Oh, whose responsibility? Well, I don't.
If it's on Seguin, it's ours.
Yes, but as you very well know, Councillor Coles, is that we've had a hard time over the years maintaining roads that we own. Is that not correct?
In some cases.
All right.
We're working on that. We're working on it.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. Councillor Moffat.
Sorry, so what, they've come to us and they've asked if we could either say, do your own work, or we'll take a look at it. So I think this council is saying, go ahead, do your own work if you want to, but what are we directing staff to do?
I think what we need staff to do is to make sure that we do have some idea of how it might be used in the future, and that from an engineering and an environmental standard, it's safe. And Peter, could you come back at the next meeting with a report with those kinds of that type of information?
Yes, I can do that.
But
So
that doesn't.
Peter has indicated that there's a lot of water in there that he thinks will go away when a beaver dam is gone. some of those things we just need to look at, but I see no reason to stand in the way of it as long as it meets safety standards.
So what we're asking Peter to do is come up with a road strategy to bring this to a either private road or public road standard.
God, no.
I don't think we're asking him to do that. We're asking him to look at what type of access we could allow Mr. Stivrins and Mr. Reeves to build at their expense.
There would also be some kind of municipal use agreement or a license agreement that we would have to enter into with the property owner.
Did anybody hear that from Michelle?
No.
There would also
No.
need to
Couldn't
be
hear.
some sort of. Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, there'd also have to be some kind of a use agreement or a license agreement that we have to enter into with the property owner to allow them to use the property. So that would have to come back with Peter's report as well, with that kind of process information for council.
Because it is a municipal road?
Because it's our property that we're allowing somebody else to improve, we would have to, there are some implications for us.
Not to do with use, but to do with improvement, Michelle.
It's somebody going in and improving this road, and yeah, we have done this in the past where we've given people permission to improve the road allowances, but there is a process that we'll have to go through, and that will come back in Peter's report.
So based on their ask, then we are telling them that at this time they cannot go and improve this road on their own.
Right now, no, but we hope to have an answer for them after the next council meeting.
Fairly quickly.
I'd like to meet with Mr. Stivrins and Mr. Reeves just to go over what you want to do.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Thank you. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's just we'll just go over it. We'll maybe meet up later on this week or early next week and just go over your plans.
Could I give you just a brief comment here? I talked to a number of people that are interested in doing something in terms of development in there. They always have the question, what is the status of the road? So that's part of the reason that we're here to talk to you. And let me give an example of something that happened quite a long time ago. Larry Fleedham from Fowler Construction came to us when they were developing Shepherd's Drug Mart, and he offered us, with the fee of $22,000, to take all the rock out of there and build a road all the way in to the property. At that point, we did approach Stevens. That's a long time ago, and we were basically told that we needed a road study. Harry Sun has done a comprehensive road study, and I have a copy of that. I think I passed that on to one of your counselors a while back. But I would really love the opportunity to meet with you, Mr. Kovich, and give you a mountain of history and all the semantics that go with it that most people haven't seen. It's an interesting road, and it offers a lot of opportunity for future. And one of the things that most people don't understand is that road is not just for Perry Sound or Seguin. 80% of the boat slips in the marinas are for the archipelago. And how many people are accessing the First Nation lands and all of the property over there? This is almost like not just a municipal road for the two of us. This is almost like a regional road when you really look at the future.
Thank you. Okay, we have 3 more hands up, and then we'll move on. Councillor Collins?
Yes. Yes, Mayor, thank you. So in the interim, can they access, so in the interim, can they access their property when they want to, as long as they're not developing it at this time?
Sure.
All right, that's all I care about. Thank you.
Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Peter, you mentioned that the two, on this map that was supplied, the 2 wider orange spots are full road allowance width, correct?
Yes.
But the part that veers up towards the boundary narrows to a 10 meter width, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Under those circumstances, is it not then, does that make it impossible for that road to be put right through from Ulster Park to Rose Point Road?
It depends on what the access is.
Well, no, to join Ulster Park and Rose Point for all traffic as a secondary route from Bow Street. No?
No, unless unless the full road allowance at that point, including Perry Sound, were included, 10 meters is not wide enough.
So therefore, in order to achieve more than 10 meters, you'd have to take a little bit of lot 147, the top end, to encroach on 147 to make it the full width, correct? Because that's where the narrow spot is, the top end of lot 147.
Yes, that's correct. From this,
So that is a possibility?
it's very tight there. I mean, that's something that has to be discussed with
Okay.
with Mr. Stivrins and Mr. Reeves.
Okay, the other thing I guess I mentioned, in order to, if we were to try to accomplish a roadway right through as a secondary access to Rose Point, would we have to do that through the earlier negotiations with the town of Perry Sound on the change of boundary? That's a separate issue, correct?
Yeah, I think it is a separate issue.
Like we could deal with this road and get it through to Rose Point without an agreement between Perry Sound on the changing of Seguin Perry Sound boundary, correct?
Possibly, but the road study to do that 3 or 4 years ago was $11 million.
11 million. What was
Yeah.
that, was that a single quote?
No, I think it happened under the last.
I'm not in the
previous
business. On that basis, I'm not in the business, but I'd like to declare a conflict and bid on it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, so I think at this point in time, though, we're just talking about establishing an access into their land. We're not talking about pumping something all the way through and connecting the two spots. So this would be the first phase.
Yeah.
Let's get these, once they get to their property line, they're in, right? So, I mean, that's the important part. So
That's my understanding.
as pleased with Peter offering to go meet with them, because that's the best way to get this done. So,
Yeah.
I think
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that Peter will be in touch. Do you know how to get in touch with these gentlemen? I think you do.
I'm
Well-
sure we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So, and we'll look forward to the next council meeting, which is October 5th, having a report back from Peter about how we can make this happen.
Great. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you very much for your time.
You could send me an email, then I've got your number.
We'll be on it.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming.
Bye-bye.
Okay, do we have Chris Hadley? Oh, yes, you do. Okay, so we're going to move to 7B, which is the water quality monitoring report, and I'll ask Dominique to review it a bit. It's very comprehensive, but over to you, Dominique, and I see Chris Hadley is also on the call.
Yes, so this is the 2019 year-end report for the water quality program. Usually this report comes to council much earlier in the year than this, but there are a number of factors that delayed it this year, including COVID-19. So this report puts together all the findings from the year, from the spring phosphorus testing early in May, and also the second part of the testing, which is in mid-August. So if you have any questions for Chris, he's on the line, as he is our science partner from Hutchinson Environmental. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Okay, Councillor Moffat?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm looking on page 3 of the Hutchison Environmental Report. It's page 86 of our council package. Chris, there's a reference to Clear Lake, and I'll just read the sentence. Clear Lake displayed a significant but low magnitude increasing trend in TP over time, with an increase from 3.1 I guess it's something gallons per liter in 2003 to 3.9 in 2019. I guess the question I have is there something that we as a township or the Lake Association should be doing as this seems to be trending up? And I think there's another reference later on of some other lakes And I'm just wondering where the responsibility lies, whether it's Seguin or the lake associations, or whether it's a combination to, to maybe look at some of these trends that are, I would say, going in the negative or up.
Yeah, okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Clear Lake is the only lake so far of the monitored lakes that I recall that has a significant increasing trend. It had it last year as well. This year actually saw a reduction in phosphorus in Clear Lake. So I don't think that that it is necessarily a concern. One of the reasons why I flagged it as a low magnitude increase is that the actual raw values increases in total phosphorus in the lake. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just pulling them up right now. But if I recall correctly, it's less than 1/10 of a microgram per year. So I don't think that there is a call for concern. The main purpose of the water quality monitoring program is to obviously is to monitor for changes in water quality and to respond to them. I don't think that there is a need for a response to this one so there we go. So the most recent water quality recording that we have from 2019 was 3.9 micrograms per liter. That is still a very, very low nutrient lake. There was a higher point in 2013 that was over 4, almost 5, which is still an oligotrophic low nutrient lake. The overall change, while this is one of those things where while it's statistically significant, it is not a cause for concern. So this is just a statistical artifact. I wouldn't think that additional management on that lake is warranted right now.
So Mayor, if I could ask a follow-up on page 12, Chris, of the report under August field sampling, you, in the last paragraph, sort of the last half section, you reference, again, I'll read the information. It says, however, in Gilbank Lake, Lower Fry Lake, Barris Lake, and two of the 3 sites on Horseshoe Lake, we found marked increased in total phosphorus in the bottom waters that are consistent with other regional lakes. Wondering if we have anything from that. And I guess I'm wondering from a planning perspective, whether carrying capacity is impacting this, I guess, conclusion, Chris.
So the August field sampling targets lakes that go low in oxygen. When you have low oxygen in the bottom water, so that's the deep water, you can get phosphorus release from the sediment. So that is not what's coming in from the cottages or from the resorts or from the watershed, but what's loading in from the sediments themselves. So one of the things that we identified a number of years ago when the lakes were last modeled was that some lakes didn't model very well. And this was before I took over the project, but my predecessor, one of the reasons we're looking at dissolved organic carbon and one of the reasons that we're looking at deep water phosphorus concentrations is because an internal phosphorus load can cause the model to not behave as expected. So again, the loading from the sediments is not something that can be easily managed. It is something that is worth knowing about, which is why we monitor it. If it was extreme, there is active in-lake management that you can consider, but that's extremely expensive and a massive undertaking and not warranted. So our goal is to get dissolved organic carbon and deep water, phosphorus concentrations from as many lakes as we can, so that when it comes time to revisit the modeling, we can do that with the most information possible.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Those were 2 items that kind of stuck out that I didn't quite, fully understand. I just wanted to make sure that we've done our best to analyze them. So thank you.
Of course, yeah, no problem.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, just with reference to what Councilor Moffat was discussing there, So this bottom phosphorus count is not related to carrying capacity or human intervention. This is more of a natural evolution, you would say?
Internal loading of phosphorus is coming from the sediments. How the phosphorus got into the sediments in the first place is difficult for us to ascertain. So it is possible that some of the phosphorus that's in the sediment came from the watershed previously and is now being recirculated into the lake. We can't really say.
Right.
Sediment or phosphorus is coming in from overland runoff at all times. So some of that makes its way into the sediment, and when you remove oxygen from the equation, it can get
Right.
released back into the water.
Right. Okay, and then back to the Clear Lake issue. You mentioned the 3.1. Is it micrograms per liter? Is that the measurement?
Yes.
Okay, that they went from 3.1 to 3.9, which you consider as moderate increase. But I heard you say that the testing you did this year, I thought there was no testing done this year, because you mentioned that in testing this year it was down a bit.
Apologies.
Was there
So when
testing this year or not?
when I said this year, what I meant was the year of the report. So 2019 was the year that Clear Lake was sampled. It was 3.9 that year. 2017, it had been sampled prior to that, and it was 4.3. So it was trending down.
Oh,
I'm looking at the data for Clear Lake right now, and it's been bouncing around between
no, I understand.
2.4 and 4.7 since
Yeah.
2003 when it was initially
Right.
sampled.
We're still a bit between the goalposts. No, when
Yeah.
I just heard you make reference to this year, I was assuming you meant 20, and then but at the same time, we didn't do any testing in 20.
No, I
So-
apologize.
Okay.
2019.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? It's good to have, and our intention is to test next year, is it correct, Dominique? 2021? Yeah. Okay, well, let's hope we get back to normalcy, and thank you very, very much, Chris. Your report is easy to understand and comprehensive, so thank you very much.
No problem at all. I'm happy to join anytime you need.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to item C, just 107, and I think that's Steve, isn't it? Councilor or Director Stone, do you want to go through some of your statistics and the report that's on page 107? I found it very interesting in your analysis that recent permits are closing much more quickly than old ports. So, oh, we have Mark. Mark's going to handle this. Okay, great. Go ahead.
How you doing?
Good.
Thanks, Council. Steve and I thought it would be prudent to kind of give you guys a little bit of an update on some of the information that we've come across so far and trying to establish, the report that was requested of us for a future council meeting. So as going through this report, you can see that we've kind of figured out some general closure rates for specific permit timelines. The one in particular, once you get into section 4, is that the permit dates of 2005 to present have a 70% closure rate, where all the ones prior to that have a 45. And then we also started investigating some of the areas that may be able to be closed, or which ones had priority. But in the end, we found a couple interesting facts. One was that overall of the open permits that we do have, there's 519 permits where we actually did a final inspection, but a final re-inspection was required, but it was never called for. So in fact, if we actually had been called for those or able to close those, it would actually increase our overall closure rate another 4% up to 58%. And another interesting point was all of the open dock permits that we found over the full length of time, at about 626 inspections that we can go out and do, and that would actually result in another 4% jump coming up to 62 overall, which would probably put us closer to 80% closure rate for anything between 2005 and present. So that's just kind of part of some of the information that we're gathering, among other things. But we thought it would be a good idea to share that with you guys and just let you know where we're at.
Thank you, Mark. We have a question from Councillor Osborne.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, you mentioned that calls for closure of permits. Whose responsibility is it to close a building permit?
The owners.
And if the owners don't call, we don't take, is there any type of action we take after so many years or months, or we just let it go?
Well, we don't necessarily just let it go, but in a previous report, I did make the comment that there is actually no requirement under the Building Code Act to perform a final. So these finals are being requested by the owners because they want them closed. Of course, we want them closed as well. So we go through the process with them, and we have our checklist and whatever may be outstanding still as far as occupancy and or final checklist items are noted, and it's up to them to complete those items and call us back.
Well, what you're saying is the building code doesn't require the township to do anything in an outstanding permit, even decades later, that we leave that on the onus is on the applicant, and if they don't ask for a final, it doesn't get done. Is that why we're behind 6,800 permits? And my second question is, based on the rate you're going, how long would it take to close 6,800 building permits?
Yeah, well, so the first part of your question, I mean, there's a multitude of reasons why we're behind that far. Obviously, from the data that's in this report and the attached schedule, I made a note that a lot of the more proactive closing of the permits started with the ones that are dated around 2000. And it's evident in that line graph that about how many that we've been closing since the last 10 or 15 years. I'm sorry. Can you repeat your second question?
The second question is this: we've obviously the township, not even as this township, as Christie, Foley, Humphrey, etc., going back before the year 98, 99, we've fallen behind significantly. Your immediate superior, Director Stone, has indicated he feels we can catch up and get this done over time. I'm not going to speak for all the council, but there's been a number of questions over the course of these discussions with Director Stone as to how can you possibly catch up, and isn't there a better way of waiving the finals on these to get them cleared from the deck? So my question was, how many months or years would you perceive it would take to get all of these closed? 6,800 open permits. How long?
Okay, well, obviously, some of that answer may come through some of the discussions and research we're doing with our solicitor and the insurance company. So if we were continuing down the road that we're going right now with the efforts that we're doing right now, it would definitely take it would take a few years for sure, only because we are actually opening over 300 permits a year by issuing them. And so obviously, as long as we are closing more permits than we're opening, we're going to be catching up and getting better. But
in 2 years, you figure you could do that?
It's a staff resources issue. Yeah. I
won't press you any further on it. It's probably a question that's very difficult to answer.
It is.
Given the 60-year history of these open permits. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Councillor Collins has a question.
Mark,
Yes.
what's your reasoning for wasting valuable time now for outstanding permits from 1961 until 2004?
I guess I don't really understand the whole question. Sorry, can you?
I'll say it again. Absolutely. What's your reasoning? Your reasoning for wasting valuable time now for outstanding permits in 1961 until 2004?
You mean in an effort to close those permits?
Why are you wasting your time? This is what I want to know. This is what council wants to know. Not just me. Council wants to know.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Are you making money?
No, Councillor Collins, it's not about the money. It's you know,
Well, I was told by a colleague of mine that if he wanted to close an open building permit going back to the 80s or 90s, that he would have to pay you $300. Is that true?
we do have something in our building bylaw.
Interesting.
Anyway,
if you're getting information from our insurance company and our solicitor, we need to be privy to that information.
Yeah.
And I believe that we will get that when the full report is there. Our Director Stone has something to add.
Yeah, if I may, to Councillor Collins, the issue of closing permits simply boils down to the township is mandated to sort of process the building permits. I mean, that's given to us by legislation. In a perfect world, we have all our permits closed. So yes, there are some permits that date back a long time ago. And you asked, Mark, are we wasting time? The answer is no, we're not wasting time. And also with regards to the fee that we talked about a couple of meetings ago, one of the things that may come out of this new policy initiative is for council to say, okay, we do have a fee schedule. That might be one thing that we do as part of the forgiveness program, is to look at closing permits without requiring a fee for that closure. So again, that's what Mark and I are trying to do with regards to investigate with the lawyer and the insurance company to give the best advice to council in terms of how to deal with the ongoing issue of old open permits. And as you've asked for, you want to be privy to what the solicitor and the insurance company says. That'll be form part and parcel of the reports that are coming forward. So
thank you for that, Steve. But I still think going back to the 60s and 70s, you're wasting a lot of time. And I think that they should be just shuffled aside, and we can move on from there, especially after the 15-year benchmark that the province has stipulated.
And that very well may happen. Again, we still have a couple of weeks or less. We've actually contacted the solicitor today, and he's working on an answer for us, hopefully by the end of this week. And we still have to touch base with our insurance company. But that may be that what happens is that anything after the new building code, there's less risk. And it also may be that it, as Mark has pointed out, the majority of them are dock permits and accessory buildings. So there may be a significantly reduced risk for older permits because they are just that, accessory structures like a dock, a deck, garage. So leave it with us. We certainly will endeavor to report to you next month as promised.
Okay, Steve, just one more. You've added docks to this as well?
Well, yeah.
What are the dates on the docks?
Well, there's a lot. They range. There are old docks, and they may be the very easiest ones for us to to close, because you can certainly look at docks either from a boat or from a property line and say, yep, the dock's there, looks like it's done, closed. So
Well, all right, because I sure as heck don't want to bring that motion back to council about those building permits that I brought forward on the 8th of September.
yep,
I sure
well,
want
yeah,
to do that because it will get passed.
well, like I
Councilor
said,
Felder.
we're endeavoring to make that happen. We're still dotting our i's and crossing our t's.
Councilor Felder has the floor.
Oh, Steve, while I got you, while you're there, don't disappear, you and Mark. I get just a couple questions for you. So what I'm trying to get through my mind is I'm looking at your chart from 1960 and to 2005. And so over what period of time did you become aware that you had all of these open files, stemming back to 1960? And how did you ascertain that the files were open? Like, what was the criteria that you used here?
If I may speak to that, Councillor Fellner. So when I started here back in 2010, there wasn't necessarily a real push on for it, but it was identified right around then that we should be looking at some closure just to kind of slow down the rate of open permits. So even back then, I was working with the current CBO at the time on working back to about 2005. So 2005, kind of the rationale for going back to that time period was a few things. Mainly was zoning bylaw and building code kind of together, changing at the same time. And that seemed to be kind of convenient that way. And that's basically what I was asked at that time to do. And we've been doing that, ever since. Generally through the winter months, we'll go back to around that time and look through our data and, send out letters and stuff like that to people with the open permits. In doing that, they may have older permits too that we can capture at the same time, and we've done that quite a bit over the years.
Okay, but I think you you answered part of it, but not the other part. So I understand that your focus is more from 05 to present, which makes sense. But what my real question is, how did you guys, what criteria did you use to establish that these files, these older files, were in fact still open? Because, obviously they've been open, they've been there for a long, long time. Some of the structures they were, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the structures that they were granted for aren't even here anymore, or not in its present form. So what, did you just simply say we didn't get a final inspection? We don't have a record of a final inspection call for this permit, so now the file's open? Is that?
Yeah.
That is,
sorry. Yes, that is what we did. And by doing that, we did find that some of these structures were no longer even in existence. So we did quite a bit of file cleanup that way.
Right, but we're still ended up with, if you got any idea of what is the count from 05 back to the beginning of time? How many of those 6,700 are in that old?
I think it would be about 45% of those then. So that would be 2,700, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you look
knocks the important ones down to like $4,000, right? So.
Yeah, if you look at the big gap in terms of issued enclosure, that basically goes from 1960 to about, I'm going to say 1989. And then there's sort of the 90s would be about on par with issuance and closure. And then you see another big spike in 2001. The trend in the newer permits, it really takes a number of years to actually deal with some of the bigger construction. So, but as you see, with the guys working hard on it, you get a positive closure rate closer to 2017. So the big gap actually is prior to 1989.
Right.
Councillor Osborne, you have your hand up.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So, Mark, I've been on council about the same time you worked for the township, since 2010. I was on council when Debbie Swim was the CEO, and I have never recalled hearing reports coming from the building department about this backlog. This year is the first I've ever heard of this, the delinquency and the number of closed or unclosed open permits. Now, we've been dealing with this, I think, for at least 3 meetings, if not 4, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, talking about this long list of open permits. You mentioned, Steve, that you're dealing with the lawyer and the insurance company, that you've put in a call to the lawyer, but you haven't yet put in a call to the insurance company. I guess my question is, after over a month of discussion on this, why are we just getting around to it? Like, we're looking for a solution, and there doesn't seem to be any. Maybe we need more defined action lists, clerk, because I'm just not happy with the slow response to this desire of council to get something done about this ASAP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will point out that we are in the busiest building season right now, and they are issuing permits quickly, and from my point of view, that's a priority over closing something for
Okay,
19.
Mayor, if I just make one comment, it doesn't take long to call a lawyer and call an insurance company and ask a question or send a quick email. That shouldn't hold up permit applications. Thanks.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to go back to a question that I asked Mark earlier in my exchange on this. Are we sure that the documentation is not misplaced, that a final inspection has not been completed, or such that maybe we're creating, going back to Councillor Fellner's comment, how did we figure this out? How do we know that the documentation is just not missed and there was a final inspection and someone actually didn't put paper to pen, and therefore we're sort of chasing a tail, which we don't have to?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I understand, and we've talked about that before. And all I can say is because we don't have a record of it, we have to assume that it wasn't done if somebody is looking to get it closed. Say when we do our when the lawyers or whatever through a potential purchase or sale are looking for our records, we don't necessarily say that the permit wasn't closed. We have to report that there's no record, and that's generally how we have to deal with it, because we don't know one way or the other if it had been done. There was been the odd case in the past where somebody has gotten one of our letters or a phone call and been able to produce a piece of paper from the inspector from back then to help prove that it had been done, and then we were able to close it at that time. But if they don't have any records and we don't, we can't just assume that it had been done, obviously.
But you've done the opposite and assumed that it hasn't been done. So there's a 180-degree turn between what your assumption is and what maybe the reality is. You've erred on the side of it must not be done, as opposed to it could have been done or it must have been done.
Well, yeah, we're obviously we're erring on that side. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Councillor Collins has the last comment on this issue.
when I brought that motion forward about the open building permits, I was told by we were told by our solicitor that we are not your boss. And I'm talking to Mark Vandermeer. Is that correct? That council is not your boss?
I'm,
No, I want to talk to Mark, Mayor.
Well, it's not necessarily correct in that statement. What it means is, what it means, Councillor Collins, is that the township has hired me to perform the function of a chief building official. And there's specific duties and responsibilities that I'm in charge of. And so when there's things that, you know, as far as direction go from council that can and can't necessarily be done. So as far as direction in the case of legislative responsibilities, I have to go with the Building Code Act. But as far as being directed to provide information on certain things, that's most definitely you guys can do that.
Right. No, understood, Mark. But it just seems a little interesting because he's telling us that we can't tell you what to do, yet your boss is Steve Stone, and he's the director of planning, yet he can tell you what to do. I find that strange, and that this needs to be corrected as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I'm just gonna jump in a
the
little bit.
CAO wants to speak.
I'm just going to jump in a little bit, Ted. So I think what the solicitor was saying is council can't direct Mark with respect to the building code. That's provincial legislation. That's what he has to follow. But he is an employee of the township, and he does answer to the township council through the regular, the way that all of the staff do. So.
What about the permits?
Excuse me? Sorry, Rod?
So Michelle, just a little clarification. You mentioned we can't direct Mark with regards to the code. The code is law. Okay, and I understand that. But with this permit situation, this is an internal in-house degradation of somebody's responsibility from 30 or 40 years ago. We sure should have the ability to direct people to clean that up, correct? Am I right?
So part of the problem is there was no requirement in the past for there to be final inspections and to close the permits. There was nothing. It did not have to be done. So now what we have are all these open permits.
Well, how can you have a law about permits and the necessity to get a permit if it doesn't have to be closed? That's like saying you got to pay me, but you don't have to give me any cash. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
That's correct. It just, Rod, it didn't have to be closed. It sounds amazing, but it did not have to be closed.
So who
But
invented
under
it?
the building code, if you recall the letter from the solicitor,
Yes.
there is nothing in the building code that just allows Mark to say it's closed.
Well, if they don't have to be closed, why do we have to close them? You just said we don't have to close them, so why is there the need to close them? Let's just get rid of them.
Well,
I mean, this is like
Can we let the CAO finish speaking, please?
like minestrone soup, okay? Like, and I'm not even Italian.
Can we let the CAO speak?
There was no requirement to close these permits, but part of the reason is you want them closed is to reduce any liability to the township that these open permits may present. So part of what Mark is doing in the report that's going to come back to council is he has been investigating a few other ways of dealing with these older permits. You can't necessarily say that they're closed, but we are investigating some other things to do. That's what we're checking with the lawyer and the insurance company because we don't want to bring any liability back to the township for these old permits. So we're working through it. Mark is getting all the information. We are trying our best to try to get these permits out of an open status. But that will come back to council.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. whole thing that sparked this was demand letters, legal threatening demand letters going out to ratepayers. Okay, that's what sparked this whole thing. That's why we're into this can of worms right now.
Yeah, and we're not doing those legal nasty demand letters anymore. What we're
Should
trying
never
to
happen.
do
Yeah.
is
Okay.
to
So,
get permits closed in a reasonable fashion.
but we have to do it in a respectful way to our ratepayers
That is
and
correct.
not call them wrong before we know they're wrong, or put the onus on our ratepayer when this mishap has occurred because of the way our township has been working internally for years, and previous townships, and documents that may or may not be there, as Mark alluded to. So let's not put the finger on our ratepayers. Let's be respectful of them and give them the benefit of the doubt until we have proof.
Again, we're going to be coming back with a plan for how to deal with this, and it's going to be a plan that Mark can live with and that hopefully council will agree with.
Hopefully
So
sooner
we'll
than
be
later.
coming back.
Thank you, Ms.
Councillor Fellner, you have the floor. Councillor Fellner, you're muted. No, he's moving.
Oh, I can't see him moving.
Councillor Fellner, you're muted.
Michelle's making the most sense here to me tonight. What I heard earlier in the meeting is there's no requirement under the Ontario Building Code to close a permit, right? And that's why in the old days, a lot of the times, the building inspector never came back. I mean, it's pretty typical, never came back in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 70s. Buy your permit, build your building, don't see the whites of his eyes again. So because of that policy, or the way it was done back then these ones have been all thrown into open files, right? Because there's no legal requirement to have them closed. So if there's no legal requirement to have them closed, then the building code says you don't have to close them. You can close them. You don't have to. Then you should simply just be able to lose them. You know, because I mean, if there haven't been a problem to date, why would we suspect they're going to be a problem 10 years from now? I mean, I think it's just one of these things where the number's so big that we should be concentrating on managing the ongoing permits over the last 10 years and somehow put these things in a vault or whatever we got to do with them and just get rid of them. And we should do it sooner rather than later.
I agree with.
Seguin. It's all municipalities that are having this problem.
I don't care about other municipalities. I care about
Can we
us.
please let the CAO speak?
So it is something that the OBOA is dealing with most municipalities in Ontario. There's all of these old permits. But like I said, Mark and his team are trying to come up with a reasonable way forward to try to get these closed and not have them come back time and time again.
And Director Stone, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. I guess it was in relation to the discussion about council's role and their relationship with the CBO. So I was just going to use a simple example. A person applies to the building department for a building permit. Council cannot direct the CBO to issue that building permit. Mark has the sole authority to review it against the code and then issue the building permit if it's in compliance with the code and in compliance with zoning. So that's sort of the distinction that the lawyer was saying, that as Mark carries out his duties as it relates to issuing building permits, he has sort of autonomy. And by law, he is appointed by council to do that function. To further discussion about council's role in relationship with the CBO is really about dealing with matters related to program functionality. And that's what we're talking about with the open permits right now, is that council really has an interest to deal with the backlog of open permits, and it's really Mark's responsibility now to come up with a plan that's functional in terms of dealing with open permits. The discussion that Councillor Fellner was talking about, like just sort of getting rid of permits that are open, I don't think that will be the ultimate solution that we come up with. It may be that we treat them sort of like inactive, what might be the better word to choose. But again, that's something that we're exploring with the solicitor. We actually have presented him with a number of ideas that we did a couple weeks ago. And we are following up with him. We followed up with him this week, and he promised to get back to us now. So bear in mind, council did give us to October to come up with the best practices approach with the open permits, and that's what we endeavored to do. So I appreciate Mr. Councillor Osborne's interest in getting this thing dealt with expeditiously, but those were the timelines that we were dealing with. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark and Steve, for giving us an interim update. I know you're working on it, and I believe that the goal of today's report was just to say, here's where we are now, and so we will look forward to having you come back. Thank you very much. But I think Director Stone, you're still on the hot seat, or is Adam with you? To go over the short-term accommodation summary. Again, it's an update, it's not the final report, because I know we had a lot of input. So Director Stone, can you speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, I just thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. Just wanted to say that the timeline for commenting on the draft regulations for short-term cottage rentals is passed. It was up on Labor Day, and this one, just for council's benefit, is to note that there was a fair bit of reaction by the citizens. We got, as the report says, over 300 responses, and I know I've chatted with Adam as recently as today, and he's more or less have broken down the responses there, and hopefully we're hoping that sometime, probably the second meeting in October, we'll be able to present a summary of all the submissions, breaking them down into those who are in favor of regulations for short-term cottage rentals and those who aren't, because it seems to be more or less split down the middle. So that's our hope. We'll have something probably the second meeting in October.
Okay, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. October is going to be busy time for you guys, I guess. So it's what we expected. Half are for it, half are against it. We had to go through the process. Bottom line is, when are we going to pass the bylaw as laid out by Leo Longo? That's what I'm interested in. What's that timeline, Mayor? Please.
Well, as you will recall, Mr. Longo has one and perhaps two test offenders, shall I call them that, Director Stone, that he is doing court action on to see if our bylaw can stand, and that we need that input as well as the summary that Adam is working on in order to plot a path forward. We need to see if our bylaw can stand up in court.
Okay. Now, are you referring to the bylaw we haven't yet passed?
No, I'm referring to the bylaw that is on our books now.
Currently, yeah.
Director Stone.
So you answered that. I didn't get an answer. These cases he's going to use on our existing zoning bylaw against two infractions. When are they going to be heard? And once that's done, what would be the timeline for us passing our new short-term rental bylaw?
Director Stone would like to reply to you.
Thank you.
So if I may, to separate the two issues, the court action are dealing with offenses that have occurred in the past. So they're dealing with infractions that happened earlier this summer. So they'll play themselves out independently of what council's doing with the short-term cottage rental draft regulations. To answer Councillor Osborne's question about when can council deal with the changing to the bylaw, if that's what you guys decide. So I would simply say it could be dealt with as soon as before Christmas. you have to hold the public meetings and so on and so forth. Let's say you decide to go ahead with the regulations as drafted, come the October meeting where you are satisfied with that, you can direct staff then to hold public meetings, another public meeting under statute in terms of changing the bylaw, and that could happen. You have to hold that public meeting has to be 30 days after initiating that amendment. So that would put you into November. And so there's one meeting in December. Council could actually, if they wanted to fast track the regulation change, could look at something being approved by council as early as the meeting in December. I would suspect council would probably, if they really did want to fast track it, look like something in January would be the earliest.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
And I think no matter how we proceed, I've seen some of Adam's graphs, it's going to be a divisive issue. Their people are very entrenched on both sides of the issue. So we need to tread cautiously.
We knew that.
Steve, I think you're still on the hot seat for the short, do I read this? You have a motion first? That as per the recommendation of staff report number DPS-PL-2020-101, enhancements to the shoreline bylaws, council does hereby direct staff to undertake revisions to the following bylaws and report back to council with draft bylaws for council consideration. Bylaw number 2008-103, being a bylaw to regulate the protection, preservation, and removal of trees within the Township of Seguin. Bylaw number 2008-104, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate blasting in areas of the Township of Seguin. And bylaw number 2008-105, being a bylaw to prohibit, regulate the placing or dumping or removal of fill in areas of the Township of Seguin. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
Thank you. And could I have a seconder from Councillor Coles?
Second that.
Now we'll move to discussion, but first, Steve, could you take us through your recommendations a little bit? I think it's pretty clear, but...
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor, to rest of council. And certainly through a number of items that have been discussed over the number of months with regards to the three bylaws, there's staff certainly face some challenges when we're dealing with issues related to how to adequately process applications for what I'm going to call minor exemptions to those major requests that council is going to deal with later tonight. So the only thing I would point out is that the bylaws were brought into effect back in '88, so that's well over 10 years ago. And
2008, sorry.
Yeah, so what, in essence, basically what we're saying is it's probably a good time for council to take a look at these bylaws to see if they can further enhance them, make them more functional, and also to some councillors' concerns about enforceability, to make them more enforceable right at the point of occurrence if a violation does happen. So what I've done in the report is really highlight the fill bylaw, for example. It's probably the most challenging one, and often where we get tripped up is on the whole notion of what is considered minor landscaping. And if you look at the definition, it doesn't provide us much substance in terms of how to determine what is minor. And often what I find when I'm involved in these things is I try to rely on scalable things that I can find in the zoning bylaw and relate it back to the fill bylaw. So that's what I would like council to consider, is to direct us to find a more scalable approach to implementing these fill bylaws and tie it to policies within the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw. So, and I think from, again, the other sort of big change to these bylaws would be allow for part 1 ticket offenses for our bylaw enforcement people, so that when they do show up on a site, and they do determine there's a violation in play, they can actually write a ticket at that point. So, thank you.
Just quick question, and then I've got some counselors that have their hands up. Help me understand, if we change these bylaws now, how does that impact the official plan? Because following the official plan change, we also go back and look at bylaws, correct? How do the two fit together?
No, that's not correct. So these three bylaws are municipal bylaws. So they stand somewhat independent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. And the OP already does have policies in it that deal with the three bylaws. They're referenced in the staff report. So from that perspective, no, there's the policy basis for the bylaws are there already in the official plan, and that doesn't need to change. Nor would the official plan review actually influence the bylaws, because as I said, they're independent of the official plan because they're municipal act bylaws. What will change after the official plan review is actually a review of the zoning bylaw, because those by planning act, they're tied together, and council's obligated to review its zoning bylaw within 2 years of approval of its official plan.
Thank you. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess having some current experience, Director Stone, on this, I have 3 questions, and I'm looking at page 117 of the council package. It is Schedule A of your report. And my 3 questions, and maybe this kind of gets built out a little bit, but we talk about a sketch. And I know we've talked on a couple of occasions about a sketch, whether it's the back of a napkin or if it's a full-blown landscape sketch. And I'm just wondering, I didn't see anything in here that would sort of dictate what a sketch would be. And I'm wondering if that's to come. That's my first question.
So to answer that one, yes, what we would normally do in an application is provide an example of a sketch. And I often refer to them as plan and profile. And so if you look at our blasting exemptions, nowhere is there a requirement for that in the existing bylaw, but because of our practice and my experience with these sort of things, I've been asking for plan and profiles of what they're doing so that council has a very consistent image of what they're reviewing. So that's what would happen in the sketch is we would, if a council wants to go through an application process, we can actually be very specific in terms of what's required, even in a sketch. And it could be that you go as far as survey quality type sketch material. So, and as you can see later on tonight, when council deals with that other matter, that was my attempt to get some good quality drawings for council. But as you can see, it even at their best efforts, sometimes it doesn't actually produce the right drawing, what's on the ground. So
I'm still sticking with your flow chart, the Director Stone, and I guess, and these kind of questions, these 2 questions kind of go hand in hand. I'm not seeing any touch points or any sort of inspections or review happening sort of under either channel, being minor or not minor,
right?
Whereby it would seem that the only way an inspection would get done is neighbors call and say, and they may not know, I think they're violating the fill bylaw. Like, is it contemplated to have any sort of touch points or inspections under either of these scenarios, minor or not minor?
So you're referring to page 116?
117, your flow chart. Schedule
Okay.
A.
Yeah, 117. So if you look at the very top there, it talks about pre-consultation meeting, site visit. So that was where we would initiate sort of staff, whether it be bylaw, most likely bylaw, would be requested a pre-consultation meeting, and there would be a requirement for bylaw inspection to go out and look at what's being talked about and vetted out in the subject property. Now, this could be further enhanced. I said this in the body of the report, the whole idea of an application process and a permit being issued. So, through the application process, there would be an opportunity for a site visit to occur, and ultimately, through the permit issuance, you could have after inspection work done as well as part of the permit process. So you could deal with that even before drawings are done, during drawings, during the review process, and then after the fact with follow-up inspections. So that's if you wanted to further enhance these bylaws.
So having gone through this recent experience, we know that, at least I think from my mind, is that's something that should be done. There should be some touch points throughout the process from beginning to the end. And my last question is, you given the letter that says, okay, for minor, they go out and do the work, and next thing you know, minor is not minor anymore, but they're holding this letter that says, we're okay, but we don't have a follow-up or a touch point or anything else. And so again, like I said, that to me needs to be, I realize that it requires additional time and effort by the staff, but you can see how minor could become not minor. And then next thing you know, they should have been going down a different channel if they're left to their own devices. Not everyone, but in some cases, some people may, make their own, editorial, let's say, of the drawing as they go along. And now we're into, oops, but we have this letter, and now we're into the process again.
So, I mean, the simple answer to that, and as you're dealing with it tonight, is your idea of a stepping stone and my idea of a stepping stone pathway may be totally different. And that's why I was suggesting that part of the enhancement to these bylaws would be to add something that's a little bit more scalable, that we could say, yeah, as a schedule in the back of the fill bylaw, for example, your patio could only be 12 square meters or 20 square meters, whatever that magic number is. And then so when as you say, they get a letter or a permit, ideally a permit, they get a permit from the township that says, here's your drawing, build to your drawing, and call us, at the final stage. And we go out, and as that scalable patio goes from 20 square meters to 60 square meters, we can say you didn't follow your permit, you're offside. Here's your ticket, by the way. Continue on, and we'll be back in court for a much more larger, sizable fine under the current bylaw system. So that's how I would approach that. So
touch points again through this process to make sure things stay as planned.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thank you very much for those answers and time.
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, this is a good report. It's you've made it very clear for us untrained counselors to understand. The question I have here is, I guess it's for Don Hood, who's with us, right?
Yes.
Under our current enforcement, through the court issuing a Part 3 summons, through the POA, through the provincial, how many times have we done that very often, Don, or are we?
We were, to my knowledge, we did it several years ago in a tree cutting issue, and were successful in court.
So you can only recall one case that we took to
During
court?
my time, yes.
And that's quite a few years, right?
It would be 7.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, we don't typically go to court. It's far more complicated, costly, right? Through this Part 3 enforcement. I like the idea of this opportunity to what's it called, Part 1 of the PAO, where our bylaw enforcement officers would have the ability to ticket on site right at the time as soon as the violation occurs. And I guess why I feel that's important is your flow chart on page 117, Steve, is prerequisited, prefixed by the fact that somebody is going to actually ask us if it's okay. All too often, people just go ahead and cut the trees or put fill in, and there's no request for exemption. And that's what I found more often than not. I don't know what the comparison is done, those who request an exemption or those who just go ahead and violate our bylaw. But there's where the ticketing is important to actually, it stops the work. It gives them a fine. They know they've done something against the rules. And then we proceed from there with bylaw, planning, courts if necessary. So I like the idea of the fact that a ticket can be issued to stop the work and have the ratepayer recognize they've broken a bylaw. I don't know what the rest of council feels, but anyway, good report, Steve. And the ticket in terms, there was one other question I had was, there is a schedule of fines for corporations and persons, $500 maximum fine. First conviction is 10,000, while there's 50,000 for corporations. What is that for? That's on page 114.
Yeah, that's your part 3 summons to court. So you would file information with the court,
okay.
and then they'd have their day in court, and then the judge could assign a fine as low as 500 up to 10,000. Yeah.
Well, that's at the discretion of the judge based on that schedule. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in favor of the part 1 situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. It is a good report, and I think you're hearing from the councillors that spoke, and I would agree, keep going in this direction and make the bylaw change, make them as specific as you can so that, and I agree with Councillor Moffat, we probably need some kind of a touch point other than a neighbor complaining that there's too many trees gone. But I know that's a staff intensive method, so, and Councillor Osborne makes a good point. The guy that just decides to build a patio without him calling us, again, we're dependent on his neighbor calling us. So it's an imperfect system at best, but I think these changes will help it. So, thank you very much. So we have a motion.
Mayor,
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Councillor, okay, Councillor Collins, sorry.
yes, thank you. On page 115, under the fill bylaw, number 2, patios can be no greater than 12 square meters. Well, that's actually a postage stamp, to be honest with you, because I took some measurements, and I have a patio table and 4 chairs with an umbrella. And it's not a big patio table. It's 42 inches by 42 inches square. And I moved my chairs out to accommodate if there was 4 people sitting there. Or yes, 4 people sitting there. It comes out to 64 square feet. Now, I added my barbecue. And my barbecue is 6 feet by 2 feet, another 12 square feet. Now I'm up over 75 square feet for this 12 square meter patio. Because that equals, no, it's 130. It's 129 point something square feet, Councillor. It's about 100. So I give it the benefit of the doubt of 130 square feet. Okay, so by the time you have a small, and I'm talking about a very small patio table with 4 chairs and a barbecue, and you throw in a couple of Muskoka chairs, which are 3 feet wide, as we very well know with the big arms, 3 feet wide by 4 feet, there's another 12 square feet. But so by the time you throw in a couple of Muskoka chairs, a table and 4 chairs, you can't even walk around. In a barbecue, you can't even walk around. So how can we increase that 12 square feet that's my question. What do we need to do to increase this
You apply
12
for a,
square
you
meter?
apply for not a minor landscaping. It's
No,
only-
no, Mayor. Mayor, because we know we need space. What
Okay,
can we
Director
do to
Stone wants
increase
to
that?
answer.
What has to be done? What do we as counselors have to do to increase the patio square meters? Because I know for a fact, I'm almost positive we all have bigger patios than 12 square meters. I can tell you that.
Can we let Director Stone reply, please?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So as I said, what the request in the report is really to get direction to look at adding some scalable features to the bylaw. So I just pulled those three things out of number 2 out of the zoning bylaw. So for example, the zoning bylaw allows you to have structural development down by the water measuring 24 square meters. That would include a gazebo, pergola, and a wooden deck up to 24 square meters. So in addition to that, you could have, say, 12 meters of patio. But if council wants to allow for 24 square meters or whatever number that they would like, then that would be sort of the scalable things that we would add to a schedule to one of these bylaws. And I think what we would do is in the spirit of understanding what square footages mean down by the waterfront, we would give certain examples. I mean, tonight, for example, you're seeing a combination of patio and walkways that's in the neighborhood of 60 square meters. That may be something that council thinks is fine. It may be that you don't think that's fine, and you would say, yeah, we think that's too big, therefore we're going to allow for half or a third of that. So that's what you've charged us to do now. If you do vote for us to enhance these bylaws, is we would come back for further discussion, give you a fair bit of example on what we think is scalable and in keeping with the intent of the fill bylaw or the tree cutting bylaw. So I would say from Councillor Collins' perspective, he can certainly provide us with numbers that he's from his own examples that would be very suitable, he thinks, as a scalable minor landscaping feature at the waterfront. So look forward to that discussion, actually.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Councillor Felder. You need to take yourself off mute.
Oh, I'm working on it. Mouse finger's not that fast. I think that the concern that I have, Steve, and perhaps you could look into it when you're doing your draft document. I'm not so sure in my own mind that a bylaw officer is the proper qualified person to go inspect work to see if in fact it's being done as per the specifications or not. And the trouble with these types of projects, they're sort of like a snowball rolling downhill. And as they get going, they kind of accelerate, and then boom, before you know it, it's over. And I think there needs to be a process in place where they're inspected, and the progress is inspected throughout the construction schedule. To make sure it's not going offsite, or they're not taking liberties, or guess what, you went the wrong way with your plan, or whatever it is, right? Because once it's in the ground, then that's when all the problems start, right? I think the focus should be to give the residents a tool to use to apply and get permission to make improvements to their property in the 20 meters ashore, and have that progress monitored by a competent person throughout the life of it. Otherwise, I think we're gonna run into situations where it doesn't really matter how much paper we got in place. Somebody took a liberty here, didn't understand that, this there, and we're gonna end up at the end of the road with, some possible problems. So I would urge you to sort of look at that, and I think you're going in the right direction. I think you got to nail down what the scope of the work's got to get nailed down a lot tighter before permission's given.
Right.
and illustrate it a lot better. But then again, I think you need that verification process throughout the life of the project. I think is an important piece of the puzzle.
Okay,
By someone who's qualified to do that type of thing.
for sure.
Okay.
It's something to look at of how, how do we
You know,
enforce?
whether it goes back to hiring a third party professional landscape consultant on a contract basis for each permit, and the cost of that is carried in the permit or whatever, whatever would work the best. But you to me, that's where the pitfall is. You have all the documents in place. The guy gets going, he gets going the wrong way, and by the time someone shows up there and figures out it's going the wrong way, it's a mess. Right?
Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councillor Collins' research on square footage. Good job, Ted. However, we're dealing with shoreline patio as opposed to, so when you mention, big tables and chairs and deck barbecues, I'm not sure that is relevant to shoreline patio like the Exlers. There's no barbecue down there. It's not it's more of a sitting area as opposed to a dining. So maybe we're kind of mixing up two different things here. One question I had for you, Steve, is on these bylaws or any amendments to these bylaws, how do they apply to a contractor from the area that says to the owner, yes, you can do this. And then the owner says, well, I was told by my contractor, I didn't know any different. So why are you giving me a ticket? Will the contractor be subject to the same type of ticket or fine? The contractor that does the work. Thank you.
So just if you go to page 132, for example, talks about considerations by council in item 5. It says the owner, contractor, or person. So the bylaw is set up in such a way that contractors can be included in any sort of court action. And what I've been doing more recently, and probably in the last year or so, is I've actually been where I've had to write property owners. I ask bylaw enforcement people to actually get pictures of the contractor's equipment, and I keep I actually write both the owner and the operator. And because it's structured in such a way that if I'm a contractor and I cut down too many trees, I'm in breach of this bylaw. It's just like, doesn't matter if I drive down the highway in your car, still if I'm speeding, I'm still going to get a ticket. So that's how I see this.
So can both parties be ticketed?
Yes.
Jointly?
Well, they can be charged through part 3 if council agrees to the.
No, if we go to part 1.
Yeah, right now you'd have to change the bylaw to allow for part 1 tickets.
To apply to both the contractor.
Yep, it would be. Yeah.
It wouldn't be fair to charge would it be fair to, in any case, to charge the contractor and not the owner, or vice versa?
Well, both of them are, I would say it's fair to charge both.
They're both complicit, in other words.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now I see Councillor Collins and Councillor Fellner still have their hands up, but I suspect you might have already said what you wanted to say.
Councillor Collins.
Okay. Councillor Collins is, Councillor Fellner, you don't have anything to say? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to direct Steve to work on this and report back to council. And we have a mover and a seconder, all in favor of passing this. Thank you. And that is carried.
Good work, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Steve, he's still on the hot seat. We have a motion here that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant an exemption for 9 Yoho Island, property roll number 4903-010-005-11572-0000 for pursuant to section 5.1 of bylaw number 2008-105, being a bylaw to prohibit or regulate the placing or dumping or removal of fill in areas of this township of Seguin, subject to the conditions as recommended in staff report number DPS-PL-2020-102, copy attached as Schedule A to this resolution. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne?
So moved.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Fellner. Okay. Any discussion? I think, Steve, you should take us through this one a little bit before we open it up for discussion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council. This is typical of development on islands where they have to construct an access point from the water through the first 20 meters from the shoreline. And again, if you look at the fill bylaw, there's really no exemption to allow for a driveway or access point. So this request is to establish a temporary access up to allow for equipment to get up to the construction site up on the hill.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fellner, you have a comment?
Yes, I went and looked at this. Had a walk up, no issue. It's in the middle of the lot. It's quite similar to the one we approved last year on Yoho Island that was next door. The only comment that I would have to the report is, again, we've got a drawing, the site plan, figure 1, and it does not indicate, and in this particular case, I know they're a long way away, okay, because it's a 500-foot lot. This thing's right about in the middle of it, but it doesn't indicate the side lot lines and the distance from the proposed path to the side lot lines. And I think, you know, as a point of, Steve is a, good practice, best practices that, these applications, the site plan should show the adjoining lot lines and the setback to them.
Yeah.
Right.
And I agree. I know that I was off while this one was being cooked up. So normally that's what I would require is, again, I speak to the words plan and profile. And so it would be a scalable drawing. Fortunately, that was not requested of this person, but if you recall the one on, there was a more recent one that we dealt with, and it was exempted. We did ask, they gave us a wonderful drawing that showed survey quality landscaping drawing, and that's what I in a best practice would ask for through these enhancements to the bylaw.
Yeah. I mean, this one I got no problem with because I've seen it. I've been there. I know exactly where it is, and I know where the property lines are, but you can't tell by looking at this.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of granting this exemption for the construction road? Thank you. And that's carried. Thank you very much, Steve.
You're welcome.
Can't go home yet, but you're not on the hot seat anymore for now. I have a motion that as per recommendation staff report number PW-RD-2020-019, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby declare the following equipment as surplus and authorizes staff to dispose of the equipment: a 4-yard Meyer sander unit and a utility trailer. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins? Nope, he's gone. Oh, no, there it is. Okay.
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
Okay, sorry, you moved on my screen.
Yes, I'm I move that motion.
Okay, and could I have a seconder from Councillor Vincent?
I second that.
Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about this? Your pictures are great.
Sure. We've basically, or council has approved the disposition of our Fuzos. And hopefully those new trucks are arriving within the next couple of weeks. And we also are disposing of a pickup truck from the purchase of a new pickup truck from Facilities. And we have these two pieces of equipment, which also are surplus to our needs at this time. And I'm asking council to declare them surplus so that we can go ahead. We're going to sell all of them together at the same time. So, any questions?
You have a question from Councillor Fellner and one from Councillor Moffat. Councillor Fellner.
Yeah, Peter, the sander, keeping in mind we're still in the midst of delving with our seasonal roads policy for what it could possibly bring, which probably isn't going to be a great deal of money. Would not be more prudent just to hang on to it for a couple of years in case we find ourselves in the need of a smaller sander at this size for some of the seasonal roads?
This is a big sander that fit the capacity of the Fuso, and and for that reason, it really doesn't fit any truck that we have without being over capacity. So,
right. Yeah,
so
it would be more like for a 5-ton truck, right? 6-ton truck.
Yeah, it would only fit in a tandem legally. So we've already have sanders on our tandems. So it's
only 4 yards, Peter.
Pardon me?
It's only a 4-yard sander.
Correct.
Yeah. Gotta be a little smaller than that, isn't it? No?
It would be, well, I'm saying it's bigger than the salt dogs we have. It's the biggest sander we have.
Oh, okay.
And it really doesn't fit in a piece of equipment. So we feel that while it's still in good operating condition, it would be time to dispose of it in the fall here before winter.
Councillor Moffat, you have a question.
Sorry, Peter, you mentioned about a pickup truck. Is that on another report that we're bundling with?
It was the Facilities Council report, yes.
We did a couple weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking you.
So these are, we're going to do a disposition, and we want to sort of bundle everything together all at once because they're sealed bids, and we want to do the process once to clean up what we have.
My apologies. I thought you were referring to a truck that you were disposing of, not Facilities out of Dominique's department.
No, but the process involves all the.
Yes, I understand that. I just thought that you were referencing your own truck. So
no.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor of authorizing the disposition or declaring it, whatever it's called, declaring it surplus? Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. So now we move to the Shore Road Allowance. Council will now consider the following Shore Road Allowance application. Shore Road Allowance application number RAF-2019-0010-H for Waldman at Whitefish Lake, bylaw number 2020-087. Have there been any written objections received?
No written objections have been received.
Okay, so we have a motion that bylaw number 2020-087, being a bylaw to close, stop up, and sell a portion of original Shore Road Allowance, application number RAF 2019-0010-H for Waldman, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Moffat?
I so move.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Coles.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, this is a motion that bylaw number 2020-090, being a bylaw to stop up temporarily part of the highway municipally known as Victoria Street East in the village of Rosso, now the Township of Seguin, District of Parry Sound, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Osborne?
So moved.
And seconded by Councillor Vincent?
I second that.
You'll recall that this is for the market to have a Thanksgiving market on Thanksgiving weekend. All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. And now we have an addendum from ViaNet. They were asked to reconsider the tower location, as you can see in the addendum. They continue to prefer the site at 125 Rankin Lake Road to everything they've looked at so far, but they have provided an option, which is option B, which will basically take them back to the drawing board, and they will review other possible tower site locations. And this is expected to take several weeks to determine the viability of other potential options, and it would likely delay the installation of internet until the spring of 2021, just because of weather. So they're asking for council's permission to proceed with 125 Rankin Lake Road, or council's direction to start again, looking at other options. Is there any discussion? Councillor Moffat.
Option B, investigate other sites, please.
Okay, Councillor Osborne.
Yes, Mayor, they're asking for an extension until the spring of 21.
Yeah, they don't think they'll still try for the autumn, but it is likely going to, because of weather, likely not going to have the internet working until the spring.
Yeah, I think our CAO was asked by someone as to the details of the contract with ViaNet. Do we have, I know we have a lease agreement form that
No, we don't have a lease agreement yet until we approve the location.
No. We had a proposed lease agreement, Mayor, right? But do we have a contract that details all the details of what they're providing and how it's being provided in a timeline? We've seen reports and on timelines, etc. In the end, are we going to have a contract that gives a timeline outlining an end date, a completion date from our point of view? Or are we just at the mercy of this company to determine when they feel they'll finish? Like, is there going to be a formal contract? That's the question. Michelle? Can you answer that?
Yep, getting there. Just give me a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a formal contract. The draft terms came to council some time ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I can send it to you, Rod. And now that I recall, it was Councillor Moffat that asked for it, and I'm sorry, Councillor Moffat, I haven't gotten it to you, but I will. So.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep, I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, at the last meeting, I think you will recall that I agreed with Daryl that the end of Little Otter Lake is a sea of steel, and I think that was Daryl's prime opposition to them locating here. I guess subsequently they sent a picture around that shows this little pencil beside the other towers is how it would be viewed from Otter Lake. Honestly, upon reflection, I understand the dilemma, but honestly, there's so much metal there now, I don't think one little council tower is going to make much difference. That's my view of the current location. It's just, it is a nightmare of hydro lines and Henvey and the hydro tower that's there. And I don't know that one more is going to make much difference. That's just, I drove by it. I've looked at at the site. Anyway, that's just my view at this point.
Councillor Finson.
I was just going to say similar to Art, is that one more tower in that space is not going to make a whole lot of difference to that view. But I also will say that ViaNet is only putting it out, the date out, because the site has not, we haven't approved of the site. So it's not, they're not reneging on their deal. What they're saying is, if you want us to go looking somewhere else, then we will. And they tried with you, Daryl, that didn't work out. They were, it didn't work out. That's fine, but they tried to get another site right away. I don't think that it's going to bother the view much more. And I'm just saying that they have offered to look for another site, but if they do that, it will delay internet. It will delay their making it happen. So that's all I have to say, is that they're trying.
Councillor Osborne.
Oh, sorry, I didn't take my hand down, but I did have one more comment. We're liable to see increased cellular and internet coverage from Bell before this happens, because I think they're destined to be done by spring. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat, you have your hand up.
Yes. Let's get the facts on the table here. I did speak to ViaNet. They did go back to the prior landowner at Ferris Road. They were not unable to come to an agreement. That is what it is. The fact of the matter is putting something else there just because there's a whole bunch more stuff there is unacceptable. Let's put a whole bunch of towers on Lake Ross or Lake Joe and see what the reaction would be. And I know what it would be like. Absolutely no way. One more is not enough, or sorry, is too much. So to abuse Little Otter and throw another tower is unacceptable. I would like to see them look at other options. And if we are delayed a little bit, we are delayed a little bit. And I'd rather, because if this comes down to it, it's easy to rally the people and push back. So I'd rather get a spot, considering that we're an investor in this project, where we do not have neighbor versus neighbor. My preference would be is to try to get an acceptable spot that works for both from a technology point of view, as well as from a neighborhood point of view. And we don't have a dispute that way. And again, if it takes a few extra weeks, it does. If it lands back here, at least we've tried and we've demonstrated that to everyone, and we can go back to them and explain it to them. But if you sit on the dock of George Johnson, who is directly across from the Foley Matheson beach, all he sees is steel. And again, a lot of people on Little Otter see steel. I see it a little, others depending on where you're located, but as soon as you get on the water, all you see is steel around. And I think it just behooves this council to do a better job with regards to this, instead of forcing it down residents' throats. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Finson.
I would just like to say, Daryl, that's great. I think you're absolutely right. But we have to not punish ViaNet because they're going to try another option. I think that it's great that they want to try another option. And if that would give us a little more information and maybe, like you say, a better spot, and it would help out the Otter Lake, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. If it can be done and we've given it, our best, then I agree with you that we could wait and go with, we'll go with whatever we have to, but if they can come up with a better solution, I'm in for that, for sure. I'm with you. Let's not just throw it at them, but let's not throw ViaNet under the bus either. They're doing their best to do their best, right? They're doing their best to please everybody. So I think that that's a good thing.
And I'm not, and sorry, Mayor, I'm not throwing ViaNet under the bus. I would like to work with them more to see if we can find a location in Ward 1 that fits all the parameters. But as of right now, I haven't had that meeting. I've had, a couple of discussions sort of ad hoc on the Ferris Road site. So I'm certainly not throwing VNet under the bus. That's not the case.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fellner?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Gail and I think that VNet needs to do some more due diligence and see if they can see a site that's maybe a little bit more less intrusive to the residents and would have the same kind of performance capabilities. And if that delays the project somewhat, so be it. I mean, once these towers are established, they're going to be there for a long time, and I think the prudent thing is to make sure that they're put in the best possible place possible. Now, if they come back and they say there's just no way it isn't going to work anywhere else, well, then I guess that's a different road we got to go down. But I think it would a 1-2 month delay. I don't think is insurmountable, and it's not their. I'm sure they made their schedule based on the assumption they'd be able to use that public land. So I don't think that's anything you'd want to punish them for either. So not my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Collins?
Yes, Mayor. Councillor Fellner, my internet froze and I did not get his input originally. So, sorry, Terry, could I listen to what you just said? Initially, just initially, please.
Yeah, I just said that I think that we need to ask VNet to exercise some more due diligence and examine some other sites. And if that results in delaying the schedule, so be it. But it's important to get these things in the right place.
All right. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Cole, and I'm hearing consensus that we take the time and have them come back with some other options. And I know what they need to do is they need to get the engineers out to the potential sites. And that just takes some time. But Councillor Cole.
Yeah, my question was back to Councillor Moffat. After the last meeting, I thought they were going to check a couple of other sites, Badger Road and the back of the fairgrounds. Did that not occur?
This is what they've been looking at, and I don't know how to forward this to anybody. It's been made by Chris Mahan, and it shows you how the lines of sight. I know Daryl's seen it, but everybody else hasn't. So the sites they've looked at in real depth are the Rankin Lake Road, then Ferris Road on what they call the Hill West, the Foley agricultural lands and work yard, the hill behind the golf course being Seguin Valley, and the Brooks Road transfer site. They've done the engineering studies on those, and they are not acceptable other than Rankin and possibly Ferris, but they can't reach an agreement with Ferris. So they want to go and look at other ones that are not on this engineering study yet.
Thank you.
So that's what they want to do. And I think they are still going to be held to all the parts of their contract, but they're saying that the timing may have to get delayed because they can't pour concrete if it snows or frozen. But other than that, I think I'm hearing consensus. Let's give them the chance to do the due diligence and look at other engineered sites. So that we don't need to pass anything. That's just information that goes back to VNet. Okay. Council reports. Let's start with Councillor Vincent today.
Mayor, two hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Osborne.
Yes, thank you. So, I guess is it fair to say that VNet would like to go on township-owned property because they get it for nothing?
It's preferable because it's easier for them, but they're not. They looked at lots of private sites as well.
Well, that was my question. When it comes to if they are if it becomes necessary to find a good site over in that area, that they have to go on private property, are they prepared to pay?
Absolutely, they do in
The one it
Carling.
said, because I understand negotiations broke down with a private property owner and doing that because they were miles apart dollar wise, like,
They did come significantly up, but the biggest stumbling block was that the property owner wanted to reevaluate it at 5 years, and they weren't prepared to do that, because if that property owner sold or ended it at 5 years, what would happen to all their customers? So that's where it really, really broke down. They
the
made
reason
some
I asked
concessions.
the reason I asked the question is they weren't prepared to pay the township, just give us some in-kind service. But I just wondered going forward whether they are prepared to pay like other ISPs are. Bell and Rogers are paying us down at Stanley House. So I just wanted to make sure that they are prepared to pay to play. It is
Yes,
a money game.
absolutely. They pay in Carling. They pay for something like 14 towers in Caledon on private land. So
Okay.
they're in the business.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Okay, so we move to council reports, and Councillor Simpson, you go ahead.
I've had no meetings. I had a meeting canceled for Thursday. Did you know the DSAB meeting was canceled, Ted?
Yes.
I have a
Yes.
cemetery.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I have a cemetery meeting tomorrow. I've had lots and lots of phone calls about a variety of things. One of the phone calls that I got was inquiring about the signs. Remember we talked about the signs, how we have a sign bylaw? And so that, you know, the signs at the log place on Sandy Plains and the signs at the Mullen Mall in Rosso, somebody was complaining about the signs and said, do we not have a sign bylaw? And I said, absolutely, we have a sign bylaw. And they wanted to know why it isn't being enforced. So that just came up with somebody in Rosso, and somebody who used to be a councillor. Anyway, so that was one of the things, that I thought I would bring up. Other than that, just some regular stuff that I've gotten, I've taken care of, and a couple of MTO issues, and other than that, not too much. Anyway, thank you.
Gail, I suggest you talk to Don Hood about the sign bylaw and enforcing it, because it is an ongoing problem, and I think they're going to start multiplying.
Well, and we did talk about it. Remember, we talked about now the guy is selling his signs at the Sandy Plains Road. He's like, you know, buy a sign. So yeah, okay, I can talk to Don.
Okay. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I had a DSAB meeting on the 10th of September. It was more or less a regular meeting, and we got to meet our new CAO. Other than that, I've just been dealing with my constituents' concerns, and that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Felder.
Yeah, I had a couple of meetings. I had committee of adjustments meeting last week. Everything went fine, but we did have one member that wasn't able to attend, and it sort of left us down to 3 members, and discussion that perhaps we should reappoint the 5th person back onto that committee, because we could find ourselves without a quorum. So I'm asking council to consider appointing a 5th person back onto that committee. And I think Mr. Stone was correct. He thought that originally when people applied to that committee, that there was a surplus of people that applied, and that perhaps the easiest way to find another person to sit would be to review that committee, and then council could decide to perhaps invite someone to sit. So I guess we're sort of asking council.
Well, I think it goes back to the clerk.
Or
Goes
to the
back to the
clerk.
clerk.
That could be done.
Yeah, because he has the original applications, but we let Craig talk to it.
So what we need from council is direction. If council is actually giving the direction that Councillor Fellner is speaking about, then we will go back and look, and if there was one person and they're still available, we can contact them. It's totally up to council how we go about filling that vacancy.
I would endorse that we should fill it, because with the reduction down to 5, it's easy to not have a quorum.
Yeah,
And I do recall that we had more applications for that committee than we needed, so.
yeah, that was Steve's recollection as well. So, that's one thing I'd like to respectfully ask council to direct the clerk to do, to see if we could find a 5th member. I also had a library board meeting, last week. It was the first week after the summer. Our strategic plan is pretty much done, that we were working with the province. There was some discussions. We will have a rather large surplus this year in the library, and we would like to use part of that, perhaps, with council's permission, to enhance our services and improve our branches. So we are putting together a plan, and we'll be asking to speak to council over the next month, I would believe, to get some direction, to see if council has an appetite for this plan or not. Other than that, we're just really waiting for more direction as to, when we could open, and if we can open, and what services we could provide if we open. But we're definitely thinking more along technology, and where the improvements of technology we can make to drive more patronage in, and get people into the libraries where perhaps they didn't have any interest in coming in. So that's that. I did get a call about the new speed bump in Humphrey. I understand it is on a pilot project, but I was under the understanding that it was going to be limited. Pilot was going to be limited to the Sandy Plains Road only, to allow a route out to the 141 highway from the operating pit down the road. And that's not been the case. There's been one set of, and these aren't bumps, these are rumble strips. They're lower. One in front of the arena and one about halfway down South Sandy Plains Road. So I think since it's a pilot, we need to discuss that, because it was my impression that one of those routes would be open unimpaired.
Do you want an agenda item for the next meeting?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah.
Okay, then it goes to the next meeting, an agenda item, because I'm certainly still getting calls about speeding trucks. And as far as I'm concerned, safety is our priority.
Yeah, and I have no issue with safety. I just want to find a solution that's not going to impair business, and will create the same results we're looking for.
Okay.
As far as reduction in speed.
We can discuss it as an agenda item next meeting. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had no meetings. I'm wondering if the clerk or the CAO has had any further communication from the province about the high numbers in Ontario for COVID, or whether those new restrictions in the city is going to affect us in any way.
It does affect us. It does affect us, the reduced number of people that can gather inside and outside. was initially just for the 3 problem areas. It is now, as of Saturday morning, it is province-wide.
No parties of 30 in Seguin. Okay, good. That this also may affect the opening of our municipal office that we were going to consider at the end of October as well. I guess we'll have to wait and see, Michelle.
Yeah, we're still looking at that, Rod. We haven't made any decisions yet about when we're gonna unlock the doors yet.
Okay, thank you. Now, with regard to what Councillor Fellner mentioned, I've had a strip torn off of me, and I hope he's watching. But anyway, I wasn't quite clear on how many of those rumble strips were going to be installed. I wasn't aware, Terry recalls that it was on one road and not the other to leave an access for heavier equipment to go through unimpaired. So I would like as well to have that as an agenda item on the next meeting. I think we need to discuss it. With regards to Councillor Finson's report, the sign issue, I recall it's got to be well over a year ago. The clerk or someone at the township was going to contact Mr. Log Cabin Corner about his sign solicitation. I don't know that anything's been done about it. The signs are still there. I am aware of the fact, I believe the clerk has been in touch with MTO about the dilapidated sign down at the old Rosso Landing timeshare condo thing, and I guess we're awaiting Greg, a response from MTO on that one. And I would like to clear these signs up too, because we do have a bylaw and we should enforce it. That's all I have.
Why don't we let the clerk answer to tell you where he's good on that?
Okay.
So actually, all 3 of these, well, with the exception of Rosso, because I believe I know where we're referring to, but the other 2, you hit it right. They're on Highway 141, which is MTO jurisdiction. And so we are in discussions with them. They're supposed to be looking after that enforcement. That's as far as we've gotten. We do keep reminding them, so we'll have to come back to council with an update, or when Councillor Finson contacts Don Hood, we can also be part of that as to where we're at with the MTO.
So Craig, do the signs on the mini mall in Rosso, does MTO apply to those as well in those buildings?
I don't know, but I expect they do because it's on 141.
Exactly.
So that's probably the same.
So is MTO aware of that problem as well?
Not through me, that's the first I've heard of that.
Okay. All right, I'll leave it with you in your capable hands. Thank you.
Now, I see Councillor Collins has his hand up. Do you have a question for Councillor Osborne?
Yes, no, and Councillor Finson as well. I just want to bring into everybody's perspective that we have to walk very carefully for signage at Sandy Plains and 141 because we're looking at that as a billboard, and we as a township have billboard signs entering into Rosso on 141 on either end, coming in from Huntsville and coming in on 141. We have billboard signs.
They're approved.
So we have to just walk very carefully for signage, trying to tell them that they cannot have billboard signs because we have them. Is what I'm saying.
I believe ours have been approved officially through MTO.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at the date here, December 9th, 2013. And I think that there wasn't a resolution carried at that time, but only because I have all this information from the decorative signs that were installed with MTO on Highway 518 coming into Orville. I've already addressed this issue, so I just don't want to see us getting into a conflict of interest. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Cole,
yes, Chamber Commerce meeting was canceled this week. However, the chamber has been actively promoting its businesses on Facebook. So any of those who are tuned into Facebook, and I tend to share them, and many of us do, I know, you'll see them promoting businesses there. This morning, I attended a Belvedere Finance Committee meeting, and nothing new. We're still struggling a little bit with the cost overruns from COVID. It's not going to do much damage to us at the end of the year, but it's still an issue. And we're still battling with the province over how they plan to cover some of these costs, which they're in discussions about. So we're looking forward to that. Another issue, getting a call frequently from a gentleman who's applied for a building permit and has, our timelines are supposed to be 10 weeks, and everybody understands with COVID things are longer. He's been, or 10 days, not 10 weeks. He's been 9 weeks and still doesn't have a permit. And I guess the frustration was he had an appointment last Friday morning to meet with one of the building people on his lot. He's got footings ready to be poured, and he needed a final inspection on the footings. When the building department called and said, we're canceling today and we'll come out Monday. And I haven't heard today whether they actually made it out. They may have, somebody's on, they can tell me. It was very frustrating this time because he has the concrete truck coming on Wednesday to pour the concrete. So he has very little time to make any amendments if he has to change the forms. My point is simply this: in our organization, like any organization, we have customers, our taxpayers are our customers. That should be our number one priority, to serve our tax-paying residents. And canceling appointments when people are waiting around for somebody to come at the last minute is not a reasonable way to serve your customer. Just a point I want to make. And other than that, things are going along. Some other issues on local roads, but we'll get to them through staff. So,
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of small ad hoc meetings with the finance committee and the museum, working on our 2021 budget, which, similar to the library, it's hard to know what 2021 will look like. Is it going to look like 2019, or is it going to look like some hybrid system? So it's a bit of a challenge to try to put the budget together with regards to that. We've had several small working group meetings with IceCap, or climate change, but we had our larger, broader second meeting this morning. There was about 30 people on a Zoom call. Went relatively well. A lot of people very quiet, not a whole lot of questions and answers. Early or shy, I'm not sure which one it is, but we have a second meeting scheduled probably within the next few weeks to look at what our work plan, what our vision is for 2021, because that's going to drive our budget. Right now, the budget for 2020 was about 80,000 in total for the whole partnership. Our portion was around 8,000. That budget has gone to 92 proposal for 2021, and how to share it or split it has not been decided, and the actual nuts and bolts of the work that needs to be done still has to be vetted, and that's why we're having a follow-up meeting on that. So we're trying to get something organized over the next few weeks. Had a couple of post follow-up discussions with people on short-term accommodations, trying to understand, and I think it's fair to say, and I'm not sure what the comments are like, but I think it's fair to say that the view from a larger lake, be it Lake Joseph, Lake Rosso, Lake Muskoka, with regards to short-term accommodations, I believe, in my opinion, is very different than what it is from a smaller lake, based on the comments and discussions that I've had. So it was interesting. I was speaking to someone from a larger lake who didn't necessarily have the same, view from that one. I've had a number of calls and discussions with some volunteer firefighters about some activity or how the volunteer firefighters are doing and some station issues. And that may come back. I have an outstanding call. And similar to Councillor Fellner, I've had some discussions with the library board member from the library and trying to figure out opening and closing and, how do you get people in, and what exactly the library is going to be doing, and how is it going to open and attend to residents is still very much up in the air. And I know it sounds like it's a significant challenge at the board, similar to the museum in Parry Sound. As we've done appointments, small groups of appointments, but obviously that's not. I don't know if that's an option on the library. So a number of meetings coming up over the next week or so. So that's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just run through. I've actually had a lot of meetings in the last week. September 9th was the Health Center Board. September 11th, I participated with Sylvia Jones, the Solicitor General, and most of the mayors in the region for the opening of the new OPP facility, and it's impressive. And they're fully in there, and they're fully out of their old building. On Saturday, September 12th, and then again on September 19th, I was invited to participate in the Whispering Rivers Community Roundtable at the Foley Community Center. It's an impressive group. They teach children in the morning how to play instruments. In the afternoon, the adult orchestra practices. They had these community roundtables on sustainability. Impressive people they pulled together, and then both Sunday afternoons there were orchestra concerts outside at Foley. And there's one more weekend coming next weekend. I can't be at the community roundtable, but the orchestra concerts are quite impressive. You take your own lunch and sit outside, and these are all people that are from the community, learning new instruments. The instruments are provided for free. Many kids participated in their day camp this summer. I'm really quite flattered by what is going on in our community with this group. September 12th was the Island Queen Cruise. The mayors and Norm Miller helped put on to thank the Rotary volunteers for delivering the groceries and picking up that need through COVID. So that was a very nice evening. And it's clear that some of the Rotary volunteers are simply burned out from doing the shopping, delivering the groceries. So they're looking for something. If this continues to go on, how do they get some more help? September 15th was Airport Commission and a ViaNet status report that Michelle and Steve and I are participating in. The level of detail is amazing, and we try and get the reports into the council package. September 16th was the regional broadband meeting, and townships and municipalities are continuing to pass the support resolution. I think we have 17 now from Muskoka, East Parry Sound, and West Parry Sound, so it's coming in. And a representative from both MP Aitchison and MPP Miller's offices are in all of those meetings, so they're hearing our needs. And that's what I've been up to. I see a question from Councillor Moffat and Councillor Collins. Councillor Moffat, you want to go first?
Yeah, sorry. Maybe the CAO will cover this in her report. The Giggle Leaf. I just wanted to ask on the date, the facility that is applied for a liquor license at Horseshoe Lake Road.
Yeah, it's not a liquor license, it's a cannabis license.
I know.
I was gonna mention it when we got to correspondence, but.
Okay. I just had a question, so I'll wait for that then. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Yeah. So Michelle's report is in your package. Does anybody have any questions for her? You want to talk about it at all?
Yep. Yes.
Councillor Osborne?
Do you have an update? You had a meeting, I believe, Michelle, with the Wellness Center group?
I had a meeting with the CAOs and a representative from the Wellness Center regarding the survey that was completed. A lot of what they've requested has been given to the architect, to go over and start having a look at what can be accommodated in the building and what cannot be accommodated in the building. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
process is moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to draw your attention to, in your addendum, you have the Alcohol and Gaming Commission's public notice of the cannabis application. It's actually, we can talk about, okay, sorry, I have another motion, but we can talk about, it's in your addendum. We put it in the addendum because we just got it, and the deadline is, I think, next week. It's before the next council meeting. So, if anybody has, Councillor Moffat, do you want to comment on that?
That was my question, just to clarify if the deadline submission for anything was September 29th, and that's the way I was reading it, but I just wanted to get clarification if that was the case. So thank you.
That's why we slid it into the addendum, because the deadline was going to pass. Councillor Osborne.
Just a request, Mayor, before we go into close, which we're coming up to, we've been almost 3 hours. Could we have a 5-minute break?
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on the cannabis application? I think my feeling is it's a regulated industry. We didn't take any action way back when. Let's see. I think it's an interesting place to put it, but that's somebody else's problem. So
Guess what? You too.
It is what it is.
I have a resolution that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee agendas and minutes and the correspondence as presented on the agenda and the addendum for September 21st, 2020 meeting of council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins?
Yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Vincent, can you second?
I second that.
All in favor? So that's carried. So can we take the break and then go into close? Okay. We have about 12 minutes to 7 right now, so can we take a 5-minute break and be back, or 7-minute break, be back at 5 to 7 for going into close?
Works
Okay.
for me.
Good. Thank you.